Bay invented pop punk. I won't say that I entirely ripped it off, but heavily influenced.
Sure, if you take one look at me, I might be what Freddie Blassie would call a pencil neck geek. But if it weren't for guys like Milo Aukerman and bands like the Descendents, little pencil neck geeks like me would have no right to roam these streets. I'm scrawny, I'm skinny, I got these glasses, but I'm over here listening to punk tunes? That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And sure, it might not, but you know what? Milo Aukerman was kind of the first person to lay that groundwork. He was the anti-frontman of a punk band that really changed the scene, and if it weren't for his band, there probably wouldn't be pop punk as we know it today. The Descendents were kind of that band that bridged hardcore to punk that would then morph into pop punk. And they've been going since 1977. That's 45 goddamn years. And you know they've had their rises, their falls, their peaks, their valleys. So today it's fairly simple. We're going to go through their catalog era by era and determine when they were alive and when they were dead and how they're able to bounce back so many times. Hey ladies, how's it going? Dan Frampton here, and this is the 9 Lives of the Descendents. This rock and roll rabbit hole is going to start with 2 main figures, and that's Bill Stevenson over here. He's the drummer of the band, but he happens to be the leader of the band. He produces the band, he writes the songs, he has the overall vision for what Descendents are supposed to be. He's an absolute enigma. What a sweetheart of a guy, but also so determined and passionate. The second figure would be his best friend over here, Milo Aukerman, who wasn't even supposed to be in the band at first. Bill would just pick him up and drive him to practice because they were friends, and there Milo would be just sitting around while the other guys were just playing their instruments, and one day he's like, you know what, I could probably sing to this, and then it clued into them, hey, this is our frontman over here, it's Milo Aukerman. And here he is in his standard pose with his hand in the back pocket, just screaming into the mic with the big glasses. You gotta love to see it. So from 1977 to 1982, they knew that Milo was passionate about science. He was gonna go study science when it was time to go study science, and they were all very well aware of that. But before that was gonna happen, they had to put out a record that was just gonna change the world, okay? So they put out Milo Goes to College, and every song on it kind of changes the way anybody listened to music at the time. This thing revolutionized, this thing influenced, this was game-changing stuff, an absolute mold breaker. It existed in that hardcore scene, that California SST vibe that was all like Black Flag oriented or whatever, and Bill would actually have a connection to that band because before their music stuff got started, he was fishing. He was a fishing boy, and you know who he was fishing with? He was fishing with Keith Morris, originally of Black Flag. So they're all tied together down there in Hermosa Beach, California, but when Descendents hit the scene, they were much more melodic. They were much more catchy, and they were much more fun than these tough guys that were everywhere. And this Milo Aukerman character was so unassuming. Nobody thought he was going to get up there and be this snotty, bratty, brash frontman that had just like a shit ton of energy and charisma. And it turned out a lot of people were attracted to that because he wasn't like putting on an act. He wasn't trying to be like some tough guy hardcore singer. He was just a guy who might have had a crush on a girl or something, and everybody was like, yo, I've been there, dude. That's kind of like my life. That's pretty chill. So yeah, their first record is actually going to be the first time that they died, because Milo did indeed go to college. He'd go on to study some weird ass whack stuff called biology or whatever at this University of Pennsylvania, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about what Bill was doing during that time, and what Bill was doing was he was playing with Black Flag. That's right, he was the drummer over there in Black Flag, but Keith Morris wasn't around. Look, this is not Keith Morris. This is Henry Rollins. He was supposed to just like sit in for a little bit, but then he ended up playing on My War, which was a hugely influential record in its own right. But that must have been such a weird shift for Bill, because this guy's used to leading the band. He's used to calling the shots, but not the case here in Black Flag. But what he learned in Black Flag was the hustle. Tour, write, record, tour. Just relentless, non-stop hustle. So he called up Milo and he's like, I got these songs, but I can't really do them with Black Flag. How about we do them again and just apply this crazy hustle, tour, write, record, tour thing to our lifestyle, and maybe we'll be onto something. So that's what they did. They got back together 2 years after their first death and were reborn when they put out I Don't Want to Grow Up in 1985. As the legend goes, they did it all in 2 weeks, writing, rehearsing, recording, putting it all together, and all that rough charm is there, but it's also accompanied by great songwriting and top-tier musicianship. These guys could really play their asses off. And that's one thing about the band, if not for their crazy, amazing anti-frontman Milo Ackerman, is that they could really rip. But you know what? They kept this train going, and in 1986, they put out Enjoy. This record saw them polish their sound a little bit, but also be so sophomoric. There is so many farts on this thing, as would indicate by this toilet roll on the front. But I do think that would be a huge error that they would make, because if you're looking at their back catalog, that Milo logo that started as kind of a joke towards Milo is so iconic and should have been the ongoing theme for all their records. They kept it up for the first two, so it's like, okay, they're onto something. But then by the third one, they just kind of throw this fucking curveball. And you're like, no, this is not what Descendents do. What are you doing? What's this toilet roll doing here? Enjoy? And then you listen to it, and it's just a bunch of bros being bros farting around, literally. It's a good record, and they'd continue being alive after this album cycle when they'd go on to put out All. This is a very experimental record, but it's still very much them. It might be technically their best, but it would mark the end of this 2-year run that they were on. And that's pretty huge for Descendents. 2 years? Are you kidding me? Are you meaning to tell me that Milo's biology didn't get in the way for 2 full years of writing, recording, and touring? They really did take that Black Flag mentality and apply it. But it would be after this record All that they would suffer their second death. So Milo's just doing science stuff, you know, but the other guys in the band are like, hey, we're still a band. How's about we get more singers to come in and be singers in this band that we are? And they called their band All after their last record because it's all about going for all, you know? That's the whole mentality. So they called the band All. And in doing that, alienated everybody. Nobody knew who these guys were. They're like, hey, you going to the All show? Who's All? What are you talking about? It's the Descendents. Why didn't they just call themselves the Descendents and have a different singer come in? This is crazy. Nobody bought their records, nobody went to their shows, and their shows just kept getting smaller and smaller. Their record sales kept getting lighter and lighter. And what did you expect, okay? They thought they were going to replicate the magic there by creating this fucking character. This character is nothing compared to the fucking Milo guy over here. Nothing. But that's not to say their records weren't good. They were highly focused, if anything else, and much more prolific, if I'm going to be honest with you. So from 1988 all the way until 1995, Descendents would stay dead. Nobody knew that they were going to hear from the Descendents again. For all we knew, we got All and Milo out being a science guy. But in 1996, Epitaph put out Everything Sucks. And this is when I first actually discovered Descendents, because I was listening to these Punk-O-Rama compilations or whatever, and Coffee Mug, a song from this record, was on there. It might be a little bit sacrilegious to say this, but sometimes I prefer this record over their first record. This is just melodic hardcore, so tight, so clear, so loud, so fun, and so catchy. This is just the perfect melodic hardcore record. I love this thing. But it's here we learn that when they put out groundbreaking work, it kills them, because it's here we learn that they're gonna die for the third time. The last death was like 10 years long. This one was only like 8, because in 2004, they come back and they put out Cool to Be You on Fat Records this time. And Fat Mike is so stoked to be putting out Descendents material. Are you kidding me? And this record, it's pretty good. It's not their best stuff. I don't go back to this record as much as I go back to those other records, but it's clear they learned what works for a Descendents album cover. You got Milo doing something on the cover. It's that simple. And I'm saying this isn't my favorite record, but it's still a great record, still very catchy, a lot of very relatable, memorable moments on it. It's a little bit less rough and gritty and a little bit more polished and just like purely pop punk, but it had this song called American on it that was very much a Bad Religion type song, and that would kind of kill them because they would die again after this record. And that's for the 4th time. And while they were dead, they would stay dead because Bill Stevenson over here started to get a little bit lethargic. He wasn't his normal driven self. He was just sitting there watching TV, just getting really big. Everybody was like pretty worried about him, and it turned out he had this giant tumor in his head that needed to be removed. Like, the dude should not have survived this thing. This scar that you see on this picture here, that's where they had to crack open his skull and go in and take out this brain tumor. That's insane to think about. And here he is, still being Bill. And after he took it out, apparently he was just like, boom, let's be Descendents again. We got to go back on the road. Let's get to working. He was the old Bill again. It really was this tumor that was fucking him up. He didn't get big and fat because he wanted to get big and fat watching TV. It was this goddamn tumor. And now that it was out, it was time to revive the band. So in 2012, they'd get back together. They'd be playing shows. And in 2013, this documentary came out called Filmage. And you really got to go out and see this thing, okay? This thing goes through their whole story, talks to every member. It has fucking like Dave Grohl and Mark Hoppus and a whole bunch of rock stars talking about how influential they were. It goes through all the eras. If you want the nitty gritty, this is the fucking film you want to go to. If you want the down and dirty, this is the film you want to go to. If you want the deepest dive, the slipperiest slope, you're going to want to go to this film, okay? But it's this film and being back on the road and Milo just being stoked that his best friend is alive that gives them the inspiration to put out a record. Now on the record in 1996, Everything Sucks, they asked this question: what am I going to be like when I get old? This is the answer to that question. All the themes on this are about being old, but it's still very much a Descendents record and a little bit more melodic hardcore this time around than they were doing that like straight up pop punk on Cool to Be You. But for some reason, they're not with Fat Mike anymore. They went back to Epitaph with this one. And if they weren't the Descendents, you know Fat Mike would be kicking up a drama about that. It's got good songs all over it, but it's so long and maybe a little bit bloated, if I'm going to be honest with you. And it was after this record they would die yet again. This would be their fifth death. So in 2002, the original members, minus Milo, got together and recorded these instrumentals. It wasn't until COVID-19 lockdown that Milo got around to having the time to put in some vocals to it. He was too busy doing his stupid ass science or whatever, friggin' guy. But it happened, okay? In 2020, he laid down the vocals to what would become Descendents, Ninth, and Walnut. And I gotta tell you, I hate this album cover. This album cover sucks ass. But it is the closest sounding thing to that original record that changed the world. 18 songs, 25 minutes. That's perfect. But I am gonna dissect this album cover and why I hate it so fucking much. It just looks like copy and paste with these characters. Like they didn't even care to redraw it. This doesn't look like it's actually spray painted on this fucking garage door. This just looks like the worst fucking Photoshop job I've ever seen. And I think they think they're getting away with the whole doing the theme of Milo on the cover, but it's not doing it right. It's not even in the same art style. It's awful looking. The least you could do is put the other band members in the same art style. At least make it look cohesive. This looks awful. And then this font. What is this awful fucking font? So I get it. Ninth and Walnut, you want to name it after your like first initial jam space or whatever where all you guys were together. Very emotional, very heartfelt, that's cool. You could still have this album cover in a way, okay? In a way. Here's the major changes I'm gonna want you to make during the next pressing, the next release of this thing. What you're gonna do is you're gonna start with the same picture of the garage door. That picture is a fucking sick picture, pretty good. But then get rid of everything else. Everything else goes. This Descendents logo, gone. All these guys, gone. Ninth and Walnut, gone. And then all you gotta do is spray paint a Milo the size of the door. Okay, just one big Milo so it looks like a fucking Descendents record and that has like a whole new twist on it, you know? But no, you want this hideous fucking thing over here. This album cover doesn't even look like a real album. This is so pass-buyable. Who's gonna listen to this? This is like legacy ruining album art. And it would be this album art that would kill them for their 6th time. They still got 3 lives to go. Are they gonna use them?